there's any objections. So we're going to be going over the GRS, or the Grantee reporting system, today. You'll mainly hear us call it GRS. So just a few items here on the agenda, if it'll, there we go. All right, so we're just going to go over some general information. I know these slides actually cover requesting access to GRS and obtaining a RACF ID, and I know many of you have that. And for those of you that don't, I will cover it briefly, just if you're still gaining access. And then we're going to go over the GRS screens that you will all have access to. All right, so just some general information here. It says, welcome to the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Grantee Reporting System. This is an electronic reporting system consisting of several screens accessible by the grantees. It allows for electronic entry of costs, obligation, receipts, disbursements, and cash requests. So this is the Department of Commerce's address information. So if you ever were to have to receive it or give us a refund of some sort, this is the address you would use with the attention of your grant manager. All right, so if you, I believe they're going to be sending these slides out to you. So if you do receive these slides, then if you click that link, you should be able to access the request form for external users. And these are the required items that are on there. And there's a snippet on the next screen here. So obviously this is the information that's going to be issued to you. So you'll put information for the client name, phone number, the work address, city, state, and zip, and the email. And then this will actually have your grant manager on it and their phone number. And then you'll sign it down here and date it. And then from there, your grant manager will also sign it and then issue or send it to our IT team, who issues you an MHD number. All right, so just a quick note here, the person that should be assigned or should be written on this form as the contactor should be the person that's actually entering or reporting expenditures and requesting cash in the system. And you can actually, this note was for a different briefing that we use, but you'll actually send the completed form to your grant manager. If you ever were to have be locked out of GRS, you actually don't need to reach out to your grant manager. You would send an email to this email org box, so ceo.racfsecurity@illinois.gov. And if you give them your MHD number, then they're able to reset your password. Okay, so expenditure reporting requirements. So expenditures for each month must be entered into GRS by the 20th of the following month. So for example, I'll give the example that occurred this month. So on the 20th of June, our reporting was required for the entire month of May. So on June 20th, each grantee needed to have their costs in GRS for the entire month of May. I know there's been delays getting your guys' grants going and obtaining this training. That way you guys can report costs. So that's not anything you have to worry about now. But for if the 20th of the month falls on a Saturday or Sunday, the expenditures need to be reported by the last day prior to the 20th, the last business day. So cash request processing. So this is the process that occurs on a weekly basis. So cash requests are processed by DECIO on Monday and Thursday. So what that means is the day before Monday and Thursday, cash requests need to be entered by 4:30. So for example, on the Monday cash run, costs need to be reported by Friday, or excuse me, cash requests need to be reported by Friday at 4:30. And then for our Thursday approval, cash requests need to be input by 4:30 on Wednesday. So any holidays occurring on Mondays or Thursdays will delay the cash request process by at least one day. So once cash requests are approved by the Department of Commerce, approved vouchers are processed to the Illinois Comptroller's Office for payment. The Comptroller's Office makes payments to the grantee via warrant or EFT, whichever, if you do choose to set up EFT. I have more information on that on the next screen here. So if a grantee wishes to receive payments via EFT rather than a paper warrant, the Comptroller's Office handles requests for EFT payments. So you'll want to jot down that number right there and give them a call. I'm not sure why that's the only way to set up EFT. hopefully in the future they'll improve that process. But for now, you call the electronic commerce section and they'll get you set up. All right, so now we're going to be covering actually going into GRS. So this is the link to access GRS. You must use Google Chrome, Edge, or Firefox. So no Internet Explorer for this system. And if you'll want to save that link, obviously, if you're going to be the one that's reporting costs or in the system more frequently. So you'll enter your username, which is your RACF ID. It starts with MHD, and it's typically 4 numbers after that. And then you'll also enter your password and then click sign in. So once you are in the system, this is the first screen that you'll see, and it is the main menu for grantees. So from this system, you can get to any of the screens that you need to use GRS. So one thing I'll say is, so since you guys use a web browser to access GRS, for you to the buttons over here, the F2 or F1 through F23 over here, you can actually use the keyboard shortcut to enter those. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see these PF buttons. So those coincide with the number that you're, so for example, F1, if you want to go to cost reporting, which is your 351 screen, you'll select PF01, and so on and so forth. Another thing you'll have to do before you can get to a certain or one of these screens is you'll have to enter your grant number. So I believe your guys' grant numbers will begin with 21, is it 417, and then 0, whatever, the last 3 digits are unique to your grant. All right, so from this point on, you'll be using only navigation buttons on the left side of your screen. The PF buttons on your keyboard will not function properly. And of the screens that I just showed you, the screens that you will not really have to use is the PF09 or the 375 screen, PF011 or the petition reporting, which is the 391 screen, or your master menu. So going backwards here, those, like I said, the screens you'll not use is the 391, which is, like I said, the petition reporting, and then the 375, which is SBDC program income. And we'll go over the rest of these screens. All right, so your first screen here is where you'll report costs. So it's the PF01 button or the 351 screen, excuse me. So you'll enter your grant at the top of the screen. The first box is for the first 2 digits of the grant number, and the second box is for the other 6 digits. So you'll click PF01 to go to expenditure reporting. And this is going to be the screen that pulls up. So you'll want to note that you'll make sure that you're at the correct expenditure code screen in the description. So for this one, and I'll go into one that's specifically set up for you guys. That way you can see this one's for a different grant, but it should be very similar to the same budget lines at least. So this one is personnel program, and it's expenditure code 1001. So ensure that the correct expenditure code and description are selected on the screen. If it is not the correct code, you can either scroll using PF08, which you'll see down here is the next button, or you can actually enter the code that you want to go to. So if, say, for example, you don't want to hit F8 15 times to get to the expenditure code, you can actually type it in here in this white box, and it'll take you right to it. So you'll enter the expenditure on the appropriate line. And you'll see here, so there's an option for the previous month or the current month. So for example, if I was on June 19th, I was entering my costs for May. Right here, it would say May of 2022. So I'd be entering new costs right here. Any costs for current month, as you said, it would say June of 2022 here, and you'd be entering costs for June there. And if you look down here, typically, I know this one doesn't show it because they've reported all their costs, but there's a balance. So if you have money loaded to this expenditure code, that'll show the balance of this code. So just a couple of notes. You must enter the decimal places and cents when entering expenditures. If you do not, the system will place the decimal point in the entry. To reduce expenditures or adjust an incorrect entry into the amount followed by a minus sign. And I'll work an example of that just to show you guys. later on once we are in the system. So expenditure summary. So what this screen does is say you finished entering your expenses for May of 2022, and you're ready to certify those costs. So you're saying that, for example, in this one, that you had $7,236.68 of costs in the month of May. So what you're doing here is it actually would show up as an uncertified cost right here. And once you verify all the costs that you've entered, you'd hit F2 to certify the cost reported. That moves those funds over to certified costs, and that allows you to request cash off of those certified costs. And one thing that grantees seem to get a little tripped up with here is this screen. So these are not all of your budget line items. If you hit F8, you can actually see further down that there's more expenditure codes and more costs that you probably reported. And like I said, I'll show you that once we get in here. All right, so you've reported your costs for the month of May, you've certified those costs, and now you're ready to request reimbursement. So what that will do is your available cash to request, the cost that you've just entered and certified, it'll change that number. So say that on this example, we entered $40,849.75 in certified costs. So now we have the capability of requesting that exact amount. So I can put that amount here, and then certify / process the cash request, and that sends the request to Deccio, or to me, because I'm actually the approver for all cash requests, to review and approve. This screen you won't use as much. I know there are some that do consistently check their requests, and it's not a bad thing, but if you happen to notice that there's kind of a delay on you receiving your reimbursement on your cash requests, if you go to the 354 screen, you can check different cash requests. So if you're saying that, okay, I know on October 27th I requested cash, but say the status says pending, that means that Deccio, which is, accounting and myself, if we both approved it, that's the date that would show up there. And then the voucher date. So if it does say approved, but there's no voucher number, that means it probably hasn't been sent over to the comptroller's office. But if it says a voucher date and shows voucher, then it's probably processing for payment, and you'll receive it soon. All right, so next we have the sub-grantee cost ledger, or the 362 screen. So this screen will provide you information about the entire grant budget, any expenditures reported, and the balance of the grant. So right here you can see a breakdown of the entire grant. So in this case scenario, it seems like a lot of the costs are reported, but if say you're running it for next month, and I believe this actually is one that's required with your financial report that you have to submit to your grant manager. So you can actually screen print this one and attach it for supporting documentation. But this just gives you an overall snippet of the expenditures that you've entered and the balance of your grant. This one, this screen, this 364 screen, you may not use it as much. If there's a few of you that are have multiple people entering costs, for example, you might use this screen. So what this screen does is it can tell as you're reporting costs when you entered that cost. So if you're like, okay, there's no way I entered 5,000. There's no way I messed that up and entered 5,000 instead of 500 or something like that. You can go to this screen and it shows, when that expense was entered, and so you can be like, okay, well, I know that one wasn't me. That must have been, X, Y, and Z, and I need to ask them why they entered a cost for, Essentially, you can just see the different transactions that you've entered for costs. All right, so we'll actually go into the system here. And one thing I want to point out, the reason that this training actually got delayed by a couple of weeks is, can you all see GRS right now for me?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome.
Yeah, can you kind of explain, because we're doing the roll up, correct?
Yes, that's what I'm going to explain.
Okay, perfect.
So what initially happened, so let me enter a grant number for you guys. So this is going to be a little challenging to explain, but so what happened was we had you guys, when we sent you budgets, hopefully you're seeing the Excel document now. We had you budget depending on, personnel, or excuse me, adult or youth. So that's how we intended that our GRS be set up, and that's how you guys report costs. So for example, for the personnel might be the 1,000 expenditure line, but we wanted you to report on, if you're using an adult program, 1,001. But if you go to this screen, so you're seeing that the expenditure code of 1,000 is there. So we wanted you not to be able to have access to report costs on this line. We wanted you to dive deeper and say, okay, for my adult personnel, that's where we wanted you to report costs. As you can see, if I go through here, you guys don't have access. So I'm hitting PF08. You don't see the 1,001 or the 1,002 for adult or youth. So we're working to fix that. However, because it's June 30th and our fiscal year ends literally today, accounting is we're also transitioning accounting systems to SAP. So there's a lot going on, and they haven't been able to provide that for us. So we're still working that, and you guys will know when you do have access to do that. But even if you guys tried to enter costs right now, we have the lines shut off. So I'm on the expenditure code 1,000, description personnel. If I try to enter a cost of 1,000, it says reporting for this item is turned off. So even if you try to report costs at this time, you're not able to. And so the way this should be set up is you would see the 1,000 personnel, which is where the budget, we call that the budget placeholder. So if you have adult and youth programs, then if those two summed up will equal your budget placeholder. However, you'll report costs on this line. So that I always tell people to print out their indirect worksheet from their budget, because these give the expenditure codes that you'll be using. So that way it's like a little cheat sheet. If you don't know, instead of F8ing through each one of these screens to try to go to the next one, you see how it's changing? You can use this and be like, okay, I want to go to adult personnel. That's GRS expenditure code 1,001. But for this example, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to a different grant so I can show you all. So this is what it'll look like eventually for you all. You'll go in here and say, I'm entering costs for, we'll do June of 2022. So I'm entering it for this month that we're in right now. So I'm adding $1,000 to admin personnel. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to say, oops, here, let's try that again. All right, so I'm going to hit enter here, and it's going to say, hey, I need to make sure that you are trying to add $1,000 to admin personnel. So please enter the expenditure code you meant to add that to. So I would say 1,000, because that's the expenditure code that I'm trying to hit, and hit enter. So now you'll see that this added up. So June 2022, a cost of $1,000 has been added. And you'll see that my balance took a hit as well. So if I want to reverse that, so you're like, oh my gosh, I totally fudged that up. I need to fix that. You'll enter that number, and like I was stating, you'll put a subtraction sign behind it. So it's gonna say, okay, which line are you attempting to hit that towards? And I'd say admin personnel at 1,000, and that goes away. So now my cost is gone and my balance went back up. So let's go to, so now I'm gonna go to PF02, which is the cost summary. So like I said, after you're reporting costs, they'll show up here. So you can go through each expenditure code here and say, okay, that's what I meant to hit for expenditure code 1,000. And you'll go PF08. So these are the rest of your expenditure codes, and you'll keep going. So after you're satisfied with your uncertified costs, you F2, it moves the costs over here. Then you go back to the main menu and go to your cash request, which is PF03 right here. All right, so you'll see on this one, so for example, he or she already have requested cash for their certified costs. So their cash available to request is 0. The only way, let me add that person, okay. The only way that they're able to request cash is by reporting costs and certifying those costs. So right now, if I enter a cash request, it shouldn't work. There we go. It says there's not enough cash available for this request. So you have to have your costs reported for you to be able to request cash. Let's go to cash request tracking. Cash request tracking. So 354, which is the PF04 screen, and you'll see what I was showing you. So as of right now, all of their requests have been vouchered and sent for payment. We will skip the direct deposit inquiry screen, and we're going to go to PF06. So it'll have you enter your grant number again. And then this is the snippet of your overall budget. So you'll see that the cost that they've entered, the balance that they have on that line. If you go further down, it gives you the grand total. So they've reported costs of $70,500 with a balance of $192 left. And you got to keep track of the different buttons, the tools at the button. So for example, PF06 is your menu in this screen. So I'd hit PF06 to go back. But if you go to, let's go to PF03, your menu button is F11. So it changes from screen to screen. So just keep in mind when you're going through here. Let's show you, okay, one screen I don't think I've gone over that I believe is required for reports is your miscellaneous receipts disbursement summary. So your 371 or your PF08. So whenever you're sending in your quarterly reports, one screen that they'll ask you to screenshot or print is this screen. So if I go to one of your, you'll see that right now your program income is 0. There's 0 receipts, 0 disbursements, and a balance of 0. Same thing with your program interest. So essentially, if you have cash in an account that's accrues interest, and you notice that interest is accrued, then that money has to be spent first. So we need to see that in this system. So that's where you could enter your program income or program interest. And I believe every quarter you'll screenshot this or print this screen and attach it to your reports. Let me just show you actually one real quick that might have. Let me see if I can find one that has some reported. Okay, so for example, this grantee has a program income of $8.24, and they have shown it that they've dispersed that money, which is what we need to see. Accounting will reach out if you guys have receipts of program income and they have not dispersed it. I think that is all I have for GRS. Let me make sure here. I'll go ahead and see what questions we have here in the chat. Yes, so George, we will be sharing the slide deck for you all. And we ask that you all reference the slide deck before you reach out for questions. I know that there will be questions regardless, especially once you guys all have access to report costs, and feel free to reach out to me for those. But attempt to at least use the slide deck initially when reporting costs, and if you have any issues, then reach out.
I've got one, and I don't, William is just trying to access the system. It says I'm getting a error 500 code when I try to go paste the home screen. Is this something I can get help with? So you able to get into the system? It's just when you're in the system, you're getting a code error?
Yes. So yeah, so when I get into the system, I see the home screen that's on the screen right now. And then when I put in, it asks for your grant number. I put in the grant number and push PF01, I get the error code.
Okay.
So, let me
I'm
stop.
getting that message too, Elizabeth from Cunningham Children's Home.
I'm getting the same error code.
William, what's your grant number, please?
21417009.
I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. I have to search my email. I want to make sure that you guys, your grant has been associated with your MHD number. So give me 1 sec here.
Okay.
So it does look like, so your MHD number is MHD 7859. William?
Yes.
Okay. What I'll have you do is send an email to the CEO, RACAF Security, the email that was in the PowerPoint. Let me put it in the chat here. Do you know when the last time you accessed the system was? Has it been a while?
I'm in it now. So today would have been the last time that I accessed it.
Is he able to, I guess we probably, send me a screenshot of what you see, and I'll attempt to work it on my end here. And same goes for anyone else that if you're receiving that error code, I'll take a look and see what I can do. Amy, let me see if yours has been associated.
Chat.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now, keep in mind, until we get this issue solved in eGrants, you're not going to be able to report any costs. And we'll let you know once that's resolved. But basically, you're going to report costs based upon if it's an adult, youth, or if you have an adult and a youth program, both, you're going to report the cost under the appropriate line item for adult and or youth. But that's the issue we're having with the setup right now, is that it's not allowing you access to those adult and youth lines. And like Josh said, then that's a roll up, and it'll roll up like personnel. If you have an adult and youth, you'll have a 1001 for adult, 1002 for youth. And then that rolls up into your 1000 line item for personnel.
And if needed, once you all have access to GRS and the grant budget line is working, then I can jump back on one of your guys' weekly meetings and we can work through actually reporting costs for your actual grant.
Does anybody have any other questions for Josh? And Josh, we'll definitely take you up on that. I think it does go through this again and again.
Right. And the last point I'll make is, so obviously the state fiscal year ends today. So once we cross fiscal years, our accounting has to behind the scenes roll over all active grants to the new fiscal year. So there will be a time in the next couple of days where GRS will, you won't be able to access it while they're rolling over all those. And once we find out those dates or when the blackout will occur, we'll make sure to send out that information so you all aren't freaking out about getting access or why your access to GRS was shut off. So.
Good morning. I have a question. This is Kimberly from OAI.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I joined a little late. So this may have been asked already, but is there a different way that we're supposed to report the quarterly reports now? We were just sending those through email. Is there a portal now that they have to go through?
Sorry,
talking
I
about the
kind of
quarterly
lost you.
reports? Yeah,
So the quarterly reports, I guess I just wanted to know how the quarterly report should be submitted.
they should be sent to myself, Tammy Stone, LaMonica, and Rosa. And I included that in the email that I sent you guys, I believe on the 23rd, which I provided the information of how to do those quarterly reports. So yeah, you're just going to email it to the three of our JTED team.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to be clear on how I should.
I have a question as well. This is Remy from Revolution Workshop. With these TA sessions, because I believe this would be more helpful for our like kind of like a financial team. With these TA sessions, would we get like a kind of like, oh, this is what this TA session will be about before, like in an email or something? Because I do feel like this one would have been more helpful for other members that are part of the team.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in the workNet system, under the TA sessions, we're going to be better about posting what they're about. As far as sending out an email, Natasha, is that doable with an agenda prior to the session, or we can just refer you guys to the workNet's site where we'll have the outline of what the TA is going to be?
Yeah, I would continue to look at the partner page. It's really hard to keep track of everybody's emails and who's the latest and greatest and all that kind of stuff. So, but if you go to the partner page, that's where everything will be posted.
And Natasha, could you throw that link in the chat real quick for the partner page?
Yes.
Any other questions? Feel
Amy,
free.
this is Sarah Clark with IMA and Ed Systems. Would Josh have insight into my question about invoices, or no?
Well, go ahead, and if not, I can try to reach out to the right person, but go ahead.
Thank you. We have a number of subcontractors, and I'm trying to get clarity on if we're able to have them invoice on a predetermined schedule to get their payments, or if they're going to have to submit it like reimbursement. If that does my question make sense?
If you don't mind, email me that question.
Okay.
And I'll ask one of our
also, and we have not gotten back with you, Sarah. Sorry. The one thing I can say is that we do have that 10% flex like up front, but you can only do 10%, and then it'll be on a reimbursement basis. But Josh, yeah, if you don't mind following up on that and double checking.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask one of the monitoring accountants just to see what they typically see or what they prefer, what they would see when they're monitoring the grants.
Thanks so much.
Any other questions? Feel free, if you don't want to be put on blast on here, to email me separately. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. It is a hectic time because I'm also a grant manager myself and the fiscal liaison. So obviously within the fiscal year, it is a little hectic, but if you have questions, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure to answer what questions you have.
And we will be going, I'm assuming, during their grant process through a transition in systems. Is that correct, Josh, that eventually these guys are going to go to Amplifund and SAP?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if as long as Amplifund goes smoothly over the next year, I guess, yeah, it's probably, I'm sure it'll happen.
But that will come later. Let's just get you working on our systems now, and then if we have that transition, that's going to hopefully be after our grants are done.
And you'll probably enjoy it better than this old time system that you have to use, because
this DOS-based system. I mean, this is our GRS is DOS-based and it's ancient. So, as you can tell. Any other questions for Josh? Okay, Natasha, did you want to go over anything with the workNet?
Sorry. I can. if there are specific questions that people have. We also have a session at 1 o'clock today, I think, for open office hours, but I'm more than happy to cover anything that people would like to talk about now.
So as far as the data systems, is there anything that you guys want to discuss on this call with Natasha? And please use those open office sessions for anything that you've got when you're working with the system.
Yeah, I have a quick question. As far as like eligibility, because we have an upcoming cohort, is there, because I'm trying to look through the videos or even like if there's like a PDF, but like kind of like a list of like what the eligibility requirements.
Yeah, let me let me go ahead and share my screen here. In the partner guide, excuse me, list of resources, and we have the completing the application, and on the eligibility overview, these are the basic. Either they live in the QTC DIA or the providers located in a QCT or DIA. Depending on your program, if you're category 1, 2, or 3, the age requirement, if you're category 1 or 2, it'll be adult. If you're 3, it'll be the youth. Need to be authorized to work in the United States. Be compliant with the selective service, registering for selective service. And they either need to be unemployed or, underemployed. And I believe if they, sorry, if they don't meet this criteria, then they have to have been negatively impacted by COVID.
Okay.
There's a lot of background noise with somebody's, I'm not sure who that is, but but when you look at this page, it'll say for the, I'm sorry, if somebody could like mute their background information, I'm not sure. There you go. It gives you the different fields that are collected. And so you will need their street address because this is what's used to determine if they're in a type of QCT or DIA. And I collect some demographic information. And then you can see here, it's only asked if they've been negatively impacted by COVID, if they're not within a QCT or DIA. So you can see those items down here. When you look at this set of instructions, the first one is for category 4. It's like the shorter application because they're just doing barrier reduction. But then the other one is a little bit further down here for categories 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, thank you.
And we did have a question as far as walking through enrollment through the system. And I think that's a really good idea. Is that something, Natasha, that we could potentially do with the next TA session?
Yes.
Okay. So, and actually, we'll go through how you enroll somebody in the system for the next TA session. And then we're going to eventually start breaking out. We're just getting everybody started. We're just trying, like I said, get the grants going, get the people in the system. We did have a question as far as approving of your programs in workNet, and that is something that our team still needs to do, but that will be done. We're going to start working on that today, but by the mid next week, we're going to have all of those approved. And then we will start in the future breaking you guys out into like smaller groups, because people that are doing barrier reduction only, there's no reason for them to participate in, a full session when other grantees are doing, the program services and offering training programs out of their grant. So, but we're getting all of that organized of how we want to, break you guys up a little bit more.
There was a question also, can you send the link for 1 p.m.? Again, I put the link right above your comment, to the direct link to the page. And so whenever you go, let me just start back from Illinois WorkNet. So if you go to illinoisworknet.com, you'll see there's a section over here for partners. You can click on partners. And then we have all different types of partner tools, but for this, we're talking about program guides. So you can go to the JTED partner guide. And then on that partner guide, you'll see, full list of resources and then technical assistance, tutorials, videos. So you can go on that link. And then for today, for our technical assistance session, it's this link right here. So you can just access all this information. It's on this page. So right here is the link. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Am I sharing my screen? But I am.
Yeah, you are.
I was
And
like,
next to the session today, we have grant reporting system training, review of report requirements, Q&A. And we are still in the process of building out each of these sessions and what's relevant and what we need to, train you guys on. So we'll make sure to have a description for each of these sessions as we move forward.
I have a question. Shouldn't there be a couple of other training meetings prior to today that we don't see, or is that located somewhere else?
So she's talking about like the orientation.
Yeah, we had a meeting last week, and I think there was one other meeting.
Just keep scrolling down. It's under the archive section, I think.
Okay. I see. Okay, great. Thank you.
mhm.
Tammy and
And all of
Natasha,
the materials and the recordings and everything are attached to this. So if you ever need to go back, like, somebody had mentioned that this had probably been a better session for the fiscal office. Just come in here and then get onto today's session, and then you can, look at the recording and also look at any resources that are provided. So like Josh's PowerPoint will be uploaded with that also.
I had a question back on the application about the negatively impacted by COVID. We're dealing with high school age students, and so I'm just trying to think through, they obviously have had a lot of negative impacts from COVID, but they're not really represented here. So there's no alternative other than what's in that short list, right? Unemployment, health, and increased food or housing security, right?
Yeah, those are the choices for that particular question. Now, remember, the first thing is if they live in a DIA or a qualified census tract, or they're receiving services in a DIA or qualified census tract, then they're eligible. So that question won't even come up. If you put in, yes, they're receiving services in, or they reside in one of those communities, then it'll jump over. They won't even ask you that question about the impact. But if they don't, it'll ask that question. It'll say, okay, so they don't live in a DIA or QCT and they're not receiving services in there. So how were they impacted? Were they negatively impacted by COVID?
Okay, so, academic impact, obviously, right? That's not going to count towards a negative impact by COVID.
That's a very good point, especially for the youth. Let me check on that. This information, the reason we have these is this is what's in the guidance for us through the Treasury report.
Oh, sure.
But I would think an academic impact is huge for the youth.
Right.
So that would be something. Let me see if we can add that to that.
Thanks, Tammy.
Or how we could capture that, because I think that's, exactly. I think that's definitely something that we want to know.
Yeah, it feels in line with the purpose of the grant. So I appreciate that.
How difficult would it be if we wanted to add that to that section? Is that going to be much of a lift?
No, it's fine.
Okay, I'll have to just check and see based upon what our reporting requirements are, if there's going to be any issues with that. Okay, any other questions? Related just to like even the first part, obviously intake is, in with the data with the clients is, the big one. And then, obviously your grants, getting those all set up. And once again, you're not going to be able to report cost. So until you hear from us, don't worry about that until the accounting gets that situation fixed. And then I did send an email out to everybody related to the quarterly reports, which are due by the 15th. Rom Jory gets the gold medal because they already sent theirs in, the first one we received. But this quarterly report should not be a heavy lift either. It's just mainly entering your information. And then in the email indicating, because I'm sure that quite a few of you have costs that you need to report, but we can't report them yet. So, in the email, I said, just basically say that there's no supporting documentation because there's nothing in the GRS system at this point, and there's no clients, reported in the workNet system through the end of June. So it should be a really easy lift for you guys with that. So we just need those 4 documents, the PPR, PFR, and the supporting documentation for the PPR and the PFR. And then once again, it's going to be sent to our JTED team, which is myself, LaMonica, and Rosa. And like I said, we have to have those by the 15th. Our reporting requirements are different than all other grants. Usually it's the 30th. But because of our timelines of when we need to report to the feds, we have to have those by the 15th. And then we're probably going to have conversations when we get around this too, for the next quarter. The next quarterly report won't be due until October. But because of how the GRS works and we report cost on the 20th of the month for the prior month's cost, when we get to those quarter areas, we may see if you can go ahead and report your cost maybe by like the 13th or something. So like, and the only time this will be impacted is at the end of the quarter. So like in July, August, and September will be reported October 15th. So we may tell you to try and have September cost in by say October 10th as best you can. Now, if you can't get them all in, you still have to the 20th to get those costs in, and it'll just show up, in the next report, quarterly report. But that's one of the things that we're going to probably take a look at, so that we're trying to keep our costs in line, for that reporting period. But does anybody else have any other questions or concerns? And Natasha, are you available next week to do that training, or we can move it to the week after for the intake?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
It'll either be me or David.
David.
That's fine. Either one of us.
Okay. So we'll just plan on next Thursday. They're going to do a walkthrough then for actually getting a customer in, putting them in the system, and the whole front end of it, intake and eligibility part of that, and how you do that in the system.
Tammy, I have a question. Did you already send the PFR forms to complete it for the quarterly report?
Yeah, I sent those out. I can forward if you guys want me to the email. I think it was on the 23rd or the 24th that email came out to the group that we've got as far as our distribution list. And I guess that's the other thing too. And I really want to look at work with Natasha on setting up an area for like a distribution list, because we've got like a lot of people. I think we've got pushing 100 people on our list. And, we all of the people we have on our list may not necessarily need to be on these calls all the time. So I'd like to see if we can set up an area in workNet where we can, identify who needs to be in what roles, and, who, when we do technical assistance. So any other questions? We're coming up on our time here. We're not going to go over like last time. Last time, I think we had another extra 20 minutes to our call. If we don't have any other questions, we're going to go ahead and end it. And happy 4th of July to everybody. Hope everybody has a great long weekend and stay safe, and, just have a great 4th.
Same to you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody.
Bye, everyone. Happy 4th.
Happy
Thank
Fourth. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you.
Have,
Bye.
who is that? Don't tell me Alfredo or somebody.